Time now for business. Time to say hello to our business editor, Stephen Carroll. Hi, Stephen. Starting off with the French government having a hard time getting its employment reforms through.
That's right. Prime Minister Manuel Valls is to meet unions and employers later to present a revised version of the controversial bill. According to media reports over the weekend, the government's set to give ground to unions on some controversial points of these reforms. The change is coming after more protests over the weekend against the plan, which unions say would damage workers' rights. Thomas Waterhouse has the details.
Faced with growing nationwide protests, the President, his Prime Minister and their advisers worked all weekend to tweak France's controversial labour reform, one that aims to make hiring and firing more flexible. In the new text, the cap on compensation for employees who take their case to a tribunal for unfair dismissal will be lifted. Those companies faring badly will need to be doing so in all of their operations before staff can be laid off. And a planned 10-hour day for apprentices will be scrapped in favour of an 8-hour day. But will these changes be deep enough to satisfy the unions and student groups who see workers' rights being chipped away?
This project is badly designed, it's badly written, and it doesn't reflect reality.
I asked the government to change this text, to look at it once again, to flesh out certain parts. And we'll see now if they have done that.
Meanwhile, employers' groups say they won't be backing these reforms if they're watered down.
The government's backtracking. There's no momentum for reform. If we stay with this law as it currently stands, we don't want it.
The final text is set to be put to the Cabinet for approval on March the 24th. But a new day of strikes and protests has already been called for the end of the month.
Some mileage left in that story, I think, Steve. Next up, the markets.
Yeah, it's a good start to the week here in Europe anyway. European share markets opening up at the start of the day. The biggest gains on Frankfurt's DAX. Obviously no dent to shares after those election results over the weekend. Banks and car makers generally doing well. BMW, just one example, that's up over 2% in Frankfurt. Pretty happy Monday for Asian shares as well on the Asian stock markets. Japan's Nikkei closing up almost 2% at the end of the day. That's ahead of a meeting of the Bank of Japan due to take place tomorrow. Lots of eyes on that to see if they'll do more to help the Japanese economy. Gains too in the Hang Seng market in Hong Kong and in Shanghai as well. Some more of the day's business headlines for you next. The Chinese insurance company Anbang has paid $6.5 billion for the Strategic Hotels Group. The American firm owns 16 luxury hotels, including San Diego's Coronado. It's the latest big purchase by Anbang, which bought New York's Waldorf Astoria in 2014. Drivers for ride-hailing services like Uber are protesting in Paris today over changes to regulation for the industry. They're demonstrating of what they call the deterioration of their working conditions. It comes as the French government is investigating how best to resolve issues around ride-hailing services and their competition with traditional taxis. And the former chief executive of one of Ireland's failed banks has been arrested in Dublin following his extradition from the United States. David Drum had moved to Boston in 2009 after the collapse of Anglo-Irish. He faces 33 criminal charges over his time at the helm of the lender. The failure of Anglo-Irish cost the Irish taxpayer €34 billion and was a major factor in the country seeking a bailout in 2010.
OK, and finally, Stephen, a perhaps unusual boom in book sales.
Sales of colouring books for adults have exploded in the past year. In the United States alone, sales jumped from 1 to 12 million between 2014 and 2015. There was also a huge jump in the number of these books that were published. They went up from 300 to 2,000. The website Quartz has been reporting too there's been a spike in Google searches for colouring books for adults. Some of the popular titles include Dinosaurs with Jobs, which features the likes of dinosaurs driving instructors and dinosaur IT support specialists. Some ideas there, perhaps for inspiration. There's also some US election special colouring books. You can colour in Donald Trump playing
Donald
chess
Trump special sounds ideal.
Putin.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That was business.